Hi, I'm Millie, and this is Jack. And this is our 2008 high-roof, medium wheelbase Mercedes Sprinter van. We started this journey 2 months ago with the goal of converting a standard workers panel van into our dream camper van. With no experience, nowhere to work except on the street, and all while working full-time. We're taking you along on the journey with us through our series, Van Designs. Get it? It's like the TV show Grand Designs, except van. Okay, so in this episode, we're going to be fixing some rust spots, then insulating and framing the van. It starts well, but our van building abilities, or lack thereof, are really on display by the end of the video.
I do not know what I'm doing.
So if you like watching two idiots learn DIY the hard way, keep on watching. So, current project is rust remediation. So you can see here, there's a bunch of rust that's in the van. It's actually only in a few small places, but we want to remediate it before it gets worse. I don't know what was going on, but the previous owners of the van had stuck some wool insulation in just this part of the van. Maybe we were doing a test or something, I don't know. But basically when we removed it, apart from being pretty gross, there's a bunch of rust spots that we want to fix. So what we're going to do, use some of this steel wool to just get rid of the top layer of the rust. Use the rust guard to treat the rust, and it's going to turn it into a stable compound. Then we'll let it dry for 2-3 hours and then paint it with a top coat so no more rust can form in the future. It's now 6 p.m. and dark, but you can see where we painted the rust. The reaction is now complete and it's gone black, so we can paint over it with this stuff, rust guard, to prevent it getting rusty in the future. Now that we have the rust attended to, we can start insulating the van. Since we're in Australia, keeping the heat out so that the van doesn't overheat is more important than keeping the heat in like it would be if we were going to travel in a cold climate. We're using 2 different types of insulation to insulate the van. For the most part, we're going to be relying on this green foil board insulation, which reflects radiant heat from getting into the van. It's pretty easy to prep, we just had to cut the foil board into shape for the roof and wall areas that are flat. To install, the proper way to do it would be to use sticky base insulation pins, but when we tried to buy those at the hardware store, they didn't have them, and we only had about 4 hours to get this job done, so we went with the spray glue, and it was sufficient for the job. Part 2 of insulation was filling the hollows of the van walls with polyester insulation. These areas aren't flat, so we couldn't put the foil board in, but we didn't want to leave them without insulation because that would effectively be creating a massive thermal bridge for the heat to flow in. We went with the polyester Polymax insulation because we can work with it without any special equipment, it doesn't absorb moisture, and it's good at reducing conductive heat flow. I did specify the wall insulation that would fit into the holes without sticking out. But there was a bit of a miscomm, and when Jack went to pick it up, he got ceiling insulation, which is thicker, so we had to tear it up to put it in the hollows of the walls. I do have a suspicion that tearing the insulation will reduce the insulative properties of the Polymax, But to be honest, I didn't want to look it up and find out we'd made a big mistake, so ignorance is bliss on that one, I guess.
I do not know what I'm doing.
So we need to attach these pieces of wood to these parts of the roof. The original plan was very clever. We were going to use rib nuts and put them into these holes and then screw the wood into those rib nuts. But because we have no idea what we're doing, I bought the wrong tool. So we're not doing that, we're just going to glue them.
Despite the fact that I was in Bunnings, hunched over YouTube videos, trying to understand how rib nuts are installed, I bought the wrong tool. And so once again, we are resorting to glue. Since pressure had to be applied to the battens, Jack had the genius idea of taping the battens to the roof while the glue dried, which I thought was a bit of an unhinged methodology.
It's like a completely unhinged methodology. How? This is nuts.
But as far as we can tell, is actually a completely adequate way to attach the wood to the metal of the roof. For those of you who are not currently spending every ounce of their free time converting a van, the purpose of the roof and wall battens is to create a frame that you can screw the roof, the walls, and any furniture like overhead cabinets into.
So these have held up really well, despite my reservations. The idea behind the tape was that they would hold the glue while it was curing. I have no idea if that made any impact. But we have marked out here where the holes are in the metalwork of the van, so that when we when we screw the roof in, we'll have an idea about where we can screw into. So there's the 3 holes. So it has started to rain a little bit, which is a bit of a worry. I really hope we don't get rained out. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have with this build is just time, right? So Jack and I both work full time. And so trying to find the time to squeeze in the van build, you know, look after ourselves, work, see our friends, trying to go completely fucking insane. Not sure how well we're doing on that last point, but just trying to fit it in has been really hard. So I'm hoping that we don't get rained out today.
So yeah, this is where we appear to have messed up big time. Chatting with a mate of Jack's who is a builder, the glue that we use to attach the wall battens is definitely not supposed to be used for this type of application. It's quite brittle, and so when it dries, it's likely that over time the glue will crack and the battens, which if you recall are supposed to hold the walls and all internal structures to the van, will probably fall off. In case it's not obvious, this is very bad. So the next step is to remove these, and then we will actually go back to the riv nut technique of drilling into the walls and putting in riv nuts to create threaded holes to screw the battens into. So yeah, that's the update. Thank you so much for watching episode 3 of Van Designs. Despite the chaos and the mishaps, we are actually loving the process and we can't wait to keep going. So if you want to see how 2 DIY idiots solve the problem of your whole build will collapse unless you fix the wall battens and get some what not to do in your van build tips, then please consider subscribing. It means a lot. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.